Welcome to everyone. Thanks for making time in your lunch breaks today. And I'm going to hand over to Anne.
Great stuff. Thank you very much, Charlotte. Hey, Charlotte, do you mind just keeping an eye on the waiting room just in case anybody comes in? Thanks for that. So, yeah, thanks so much everybody for coming along. This session is going to be pretty interactive. So there's going to be some breakout rooms and hopefully you've got some paper and pens. And did everybody get a chance to download or make a copy of the Facilitation Canvas, the Google Docs link? Charlotte, maybe if you want to just drop that into the chat, if you don't mind. We'll come to that a bit later. It's kind of the crux of the session. The other thing as well, look, you know, keep your videos on if you can. I know some of you may be on bandwidth and things, but it's nice to see people, and you're going to be going off into pairs as well. So it's nice to see the other person. Don't worry if there's a bit of background noise. Go on mute if you've got lots of background noise and stuff like that, right? Or something else is going on. But it's nice just to talk and have a few noises going on rather than just talking at a screen or a bit of a sterile environment. So I'm going to share some slides with you, so bear with me. Hopefully this all works okay. Cool. Can you see they're all okay?
Yep, looking good.
So that's me and Boobier. I'm the one in the middle. They're my two coaches on my left and right, heavily coached by them. They're my conscience. That's what I think a coach is, right? The conscience for a team, or the conscience for an organization. You know, asking those powerful questions and kind of making sure that we're getting great outcomes for an organization, great outcomes for a team, but we're making sure people are highly engaged. We're making sure that, you know, people want to be there. We're getting that safety and that psychological safety as we go through, and facilitation is no different. This is a session that I pulled together for Agile 19 last year, and it's called You the Facilitator, and prepare your way to successful outcomes. And I guess a part of this is around, I'm on a bit of a mission where just whack yourself on mute if you've got a bit of background noise. Cheers, don't worry too much if you've just got a little bit, but if you've got quite a bit, maybe just put yourself on mute. So what I want to do is make sure that, you know, we make sure we have sessions, we have meetings which have real purpose. And I'm sure you've been in sessions where you felt, you know, what's the point of me being here? What's the purpose of the session? What are we looking to achieve? You know, and what we're looking for in these sessions are great outcomes with highly motivated people. So what I want you to do is just grab yourself maybe some Post-its, a piece of paper, and just jot down, just quickly, just 30 seconds, jot down what are some of the characteristics of an awful meeting. Just note that down.
And did you say awful meeting?
Awful,
horrible.
Yeah.
Horrible.
Horrible, horrible, yep. Nasty, horrible, pointless.
Yep.
Insert word, negative word here. Cool. If you want to think about wrapping up what you're writing. Right, now you know what's coming. The other flip side, right? What are some of the characteristics of an awesome meeting? What are some of the things that make a brilliant meeting? What are some of the things that you know, make a meeting really great? Insert positive word there. Oh, and if we can bring you back. Right, now what we're going to do is I'm going to pop you into breakout rooms, and I want you to discuss with your partner and brainstorm what are some of the things that you thought made an awful meeting? What are some of the things you think made a great meeting? And maybe add some additional things to that as well. So I'm going to pop you into breakout rooms. You should be in there with a partner, and that should be opening up now. Hey, so let's what we'll do is rather than have a bit of a shout out, we'll put some stuff in chat. So if you want to put in there in chat, just type in there to everyone what are some of the characteristics you came up with as a pair for an awful meeting. So just chat in there, and then Charlotte and myself will call out some themes as we see it. We've got people not paying attention, no time boxing, disengagement, side chats, no structure, blame game, whoa, no eye contact. I'm looking at everybody now. No person talking. Wow, loads of ideas. No objective set, no clear goal, not getting to the point. So not that focus, not that engagement, right? Let's flip it around. What about some of those positive things? What are some of those characteristics of a great meeting? Clear purpose, agenda set, people engaged, time box, lollies, there. Outcomes are met, presenter and coordinator respectful, good questions, provoking thinking. Shorter than planned, yeah, giving that time back to people, good flow. Hey, brilliant stuff, great stuff. So really the flip side of that, Question though, and you can put a thumbs up maybe if you know how that works with reactions. Who came up with more ideas as a pair than they did by themselves?
Sorry, repeat the question again.
Who came up with more ideas or riffed on more ideas when you paired up rather than just by yourself? Great, yeah, quite a few, yeah.
A few more.
Yeah, great stuff. Yeah, and we often do that, right? We often, when we start sharing those ideas, we start playing on them, we start building on them, we come up with some much better ideas, but we don't often do that. I'm just going to share some slides with you again. Hopefully you can see that. And this is something I think is really important, right? So what we did there is we did something called Think, Write, Pair, Share. And this is something that my kids do at school, something that happens a lot in education. Liberating Structures took this, and you might have heard of 1, 2, 4, all, which is a way of, you know, sort of thinking about something, pairing up, and then coming up into 4s and then sharing out with a much wider audience. This is called, and something that happens a lot in schools is Think, Pair, Share. Well, actually, it's Think, Write, Pair, Share. And that's something that you did there, right? Something that you did, you came up with some ideas in your head. It gives really good idea for those introverts and those people who want to think things through first and come up with some ideas. And then you write it down. So you write it on a paper, you write it on a piece of paper, and then you went into that breakout room and you paired up. And you started to bounce some ideas around based on that thinking and writing, and then you shared out to a wider audience. So this is a mechanism that we often use in workshops. It's a mechanism that's used a lot in schools and in teaching as well. A really powerful mechanism. But we don't often do this sort of thing when we, as coaches, right, or facilitators, when we go out there into the field. We're very good at teaching, very good at telling people about doing these things, but we're not very good at doing that thing for themselves. I'm going to come back to this, Think, Write, Pair, Share, because I think it's really important. And I think it's really important because it's a really useful mechanism for us when we start thinking about how we're going to create a psychologically safe, a physically safe, an environment where we can get great outcomes for people in a workshop, and we can really highly engage people, right? We can get that sweet spot for that session. There's a great blog, by the way, by Lynn Kazali about this. I'll put it in the sort of the chat a bit later, that talks about getting that sweet spot when you're looking at a facilitated workshop. The other thing I'm going to talk about today is about a canvas. And one of the things that I was really keen to do when I was thinking about how can I structure this session, and how can I help structure facilitated workshops. I came up with a bit of a canvas that I use for facilitated teaching, actually, facilitation. And I love a canvas, right? Canvas is all the rage at the moment. We talk about coaches as being a conscience for the team. Canvas is a bit like a conscience for people as well. We've got, you know, canvases for business. We've got business model canvases. We've got lean canvases. We've got roles canvases, opportunity canvases. And I've created a facilitation canvas, right? But the thing I love about a canvas is it helps you. It's an instructional strategy. It helps you consider a set of questions, helps you think about things, helps you note down your thoughts in a particular way that we're going to have a look as we go through and have a work through it. It helps us partner and pair up with someone and then discuss our response and share it. And we're going to use that canvas and find out a little bit about how that canvas works and actually fill it in for a session that you've got coming up. And that's where the pairing comes in, right? Pairing is so important. We don't do it very often. You know, ourselves, we're very good at facilitating and sharing this stuff, but we don't really pair up with other people and bounce ideas. Coaching, facilitation can be quite lonely. So, you know, what I always encourage you to do as a coach, as a facilitator, anybody, right, is write this stuff down, put ideas down, but then go out and pair it and build on it and bounce ideas and support others. Because when we put two heads together, we get a much better idea. We formulate a much better idea. This is what you do when I went to my little boy and I said, hey, can you draw me a picture about two ideas coming together, two heads coming together? And he's like, yeah, I'll do that, Dad. And he drew, I'm not quite sure, this is like a mirage of two heads coming together, one idea about a robot thingy with lasers and a flying banana. But if you mash a flying banana and a robot thingy together, wow, that idea is awesome, right? So yeah, anyway, that worked in his 11-year-old head. So the key things about pairing, right? Pairing is absolutely, there's some pairs here just for you. I just want to get that one in. So the second thing was all about pairing, and the second thing is about preparing, right? Preparing is absolutely key when you're running a workshop, absolutely key. And that's where the think, write, and pair and share comes in. And the secret here is that workshops don't just happen, right? These spaces, these environments don't just suddenly occur. It's you as the expert putting in that hard graft, preparing stuff, creating that environment in which success can occur. And there's this great book here from this lady called Tabaka. Has anybody ever seen this book before? Collaboration Explained. She's sadly no longer with us, but she wrote this book maybe about 10 years ago or so. Brilliant book, thoroughly recommend it. But in this, she talks about rules of thumbs, and she talks about how much planning is enough for a session. And rule of thumb, take twice the amount of time for a meeting to prepare for it, right? So if you're going to run a 2-hour workshop, rule of thumb, take 4 hours to prepare for it. If you're going to run a day workshop, rule of thumb, take 2 days to prepare for it. You've got to put that effort in. You've got to put that hard graft in to create that environment in which people can succeed. So how do you go about doing that, right? How do you go about preparing for a session? There's some great stuff out there. One of the things is you may have heard of power. Anybody heard about power and how you can power up your meeting? This is really great. And power is all about an acronym, and it's all about purpose. You know, why are you having this meeting? Outcomes. What do we want to achieve in this meeting? W, what's in it for them? Engagement, how are you going to create that engagement? How are you going to get them involved? And the final thing is R, roles and responsibilities. This is a really useful tool, right? The thing I find with power is I always forget the acronym, right? I always forget what it means, and it doesn't really cover it off, and I have to go back and try and remember. So I find that really, really difficult. So that's why I came up with this thing called the Facilitation Canvas. And that canvas really helps you think in a disciplined way, a bit like a conscience. And here it is, right? It's pretty simple. We'll send you a link and you can download it. Hopefully you've got that link that you got from Google Docs. But again, all this is helping you to do is to think and write, right? To think individually, to write, to get this stuff down, to brainstorm these ideas, to get ready to prepare up for this session, which, as Jean Tabaka says there, should be roughly twice the amount of input to the actual session itself. So we're going to have a look through at, and shout out if you've got any questions as you go through, and this is a lot of me talking right before you're going to get on and have a chance to use this thing. So Charlotte, if you see any questions pop up in the chat or anything, let me know, as I'll be talking for hours. So the first thing is about the purpose, and we'll have a look in a moment about, well, what's the difference between purpose, outcomes and outputs. This often, you know, is a difficult thing for at least for me to get my head around. But the purpose is, you know, what are we looking to achieve? You know, are we looking to maybe make a decision out of the group? Are we trying to brainstorm some options? What are the implications? You know, what are we trying to achieve? What's the high level purpose of the session itself? The next thing is about the outcomes. Think about the outcomes, right? So what are the high level outcomes that we want to achieve? What's the difference we need to make? What are some of those, you know, is it alignment? Is it consensus or consent, right? I think a really important thing there is to understand the difference between consensus and consent. Everyone agreeing with consensus, consent being, are there any objections, right? Are there any objections? Can we move forward with an experiment? So as a facilitator, it's always important to know, what are you looking for? Are you looking for consensus? Are you looking for consent? And how are you going to know when those outcomes are achieved, right? How are you going to know when you've successfully reached those outcomes, and actually you might be able to bring that session to an early finish? So what I want you to do is actually close your eyes. Close your eyes for a moment. I can tell some of you have still got your eyes open. Now, I want you to think about an up and coming session that you're going to run, right? An agile meeting, any meeting, right? And it can be 15 minutes, it can be 30 minutes, it can be a whole day, it can be maybe a design, anything that you want, but a session you've got coming up soon. And Jean Tabaka from this book, Collaboration Explained, she's got this thing called the miracle question. It's a bit like our coaching miracle question, but I think it's really useful to think about. But I want you to imagine that that meeting has just ended and you're walking out the door and you turn to a colleague and you say, hey, you know what? I'm so happy with what the group just accomplished in that meeting. Right, open your eyes. Now, what I want you to do is just note down on your piece of paper in front of you, what was it that the group accomplished that made you so happy? What were some of those outcomes that happened? Cool. Right, we're going to come back to this, okay? So hold those for now. Again, the miracle question, this comes from this book, Collaboration Explained by Jean Tabaka, based on that kind of powerful coaching miracle question, but a really useful question to ask stakeholders that you might be running a session for, to get them to project ahead and think about what some of those successful outcomes might be. And don't forget, those outcomes are the things that are achieved because of the meeting. They're not the outputs, they're the things that are achieved because of the meeting that makes it a success. And a great outcome might be that there's no need for a meeting, right? You might talk to your stakeholders, you might talk to people, you might decide that actually we don't need a meeting, right? It might be something else, or actually it's pointless us getting together. So don't forget, a great outcome sometimes is that you don't need a meeting at all. You don't need a session at all. You can find another way to achieve something. And also, if you achieve those outcomes early, we had some of those things earlier about time boxes, you know, and sort of meetings just dragging on. If you finish and you meet your outcomes early, and that's why it's so important to know what those outcomes are, give your participants the gift of time, you know, and send them away early, right? Hey, 20 minutes, we finished early, off you go, freedom, go and enjoy yourselves, right? People love the gift of time. If you finish early, don't just fill the space and fill the void, set them free. The next thing is outputs. This is the physical outputs, the deliverables that we do, the actual things that we achieve because of the session, the physical things. And I like to think of the differences like this. Here's an example from sprint planning. So a purpose for that would be plan the work to be performed in the next sprint. And our outcomes would be agreement on what can be achieved in the next sprint, agreement on how that work is needed to be delivered in the increment will be achieved. And the output will be the sprint goal, the sprint backlog, the things, right? The actual things that we achieve. And then inputs, right? Think about inputs. What are some of the inputs that you need to get? Maybe some insights, maybe some UX research, maybe some prototypes, maybe some proof of concepts, anything that you need, physical things, data, background information that you're going to use for that discussion. Just brainstorm that stuff and think it through. And people, right? People are a key thing for the session itself. Who needs to be there? Who doesn't need to be there? What's their role going to be in the session? Can you as a facilitator be independent, right? And if you can't be independent, do you need to get someone else along to be that independent facilitator for you? Facilitation is all about independently facilitating, not participating. If you feel you can't be independent, but you want to run the session, how are you going to do that, right? How are you going to make sure that you might physically change your hat and say, you know what, I need to change my hat here and maybe impart some knowledge, or maybe I need to participate for a while. How are you going to make sure that you can remain independent? The next thing is the agenda. And here's a pro tip: don't just copy this agenda and write it down for yours. This is just a bit of an idea to think about how you could structure your session. Consider these following steps. These are kind of based on ORID, and we'll have a look at that in a session. And this is what, if you've read Esther Darby and Dinah Larson's book on retrospectives, this is what they base their retrospective steps on. Think about how you're going to open it. Think about how you're going to get that background knowledge and how you're going to establish those facts. Think about how you're going to discuss stuff, generate those ideas, get to some actions and some outcomes, and then you're going to close it off. Again, in a workshop, it's all about how you diverge and how you converge back in. You want to make sure you converge back in. You want to make sure you get some clear outcomes and actions to make sure you can close stuff off. But to do that, you're going to need to brainstorm and make sure you include people as you go through. Again, this is based on the ORID stuff. We'll flick this round. This is all about making sure that you give time to reflect, interpret that information, decide on what they need to do and get to those actions. The next thing is all about environment, right? And I struggled a bit in terms of what to call this particular area, and I kind of ended up with environment. And I think environment's key. It's not just physical environment, it's psychological environment as well. How are you going to create that space in which you can make highly engaged people, you can have that trust, that leap into the unknown where people can be vulnerable, people can be psychologically safe to bring their best stuff, bring their best ideas, and they can feel safe to sort of bounce ideas amongst each other. How can you create that physical and psychologically safe environment? Think about the physical setup, think about remote stuff if you're going to use things like Zoom and breakouts. Think about how your tables are set up, what materials you're going to use, and think about psychological stuff as well, and how you're going to make that psychologically safe environment. And the psychologically safe environment comes from this lady here, a book called Fearless Organizations. And she says that, psychological safety, just gonna move that around. Psychological safety is a belief that, that one will not be punished or humiliated for speaking up with ideas, questions, concerns, or mistakes. So the research from Amy Edmondson, great book and great TED Talks, check those out. We can send some links around and put them in the meetup chats afterwards. And a lot of her research and information led to Project Aristotle and Google, but this stuff existed before, right? Great stuff. How can you create that space in which people feel they're not going to be punished, they're not going to be humiliated, and they can bring all that best stuff to that space so they can be psychologically safe? And the next thing is pitfalls, right? These are your risks. What could go wrong? What are some of the risks that might occur, and how could you prevent it? If anyone remembers this game from the 80s, Pitfall, Used to play this on my Atari. Think about some of these things, right? Think about that low energy, how you're going to spot that, how you're going to create that, that buzz and that energy, how you can prevent yourselves going down into rat holes, how you're going to look out for conflict. What about remote participants? What about the dominator and the one person who's going to potentially dominate that session? What about fear? And how can you create that psychological safety? Think about how you can spot these things, and think about, as a facilitator, how you can get people to self-facilitate, right? You don't end up a bit like a teacher, putting your hand up every 5 minutes and calling people out. How can you create a working agreement? Or how can you make sure that people call each other out rather than you, and own the process themselves, so it's not just you calling them out? Right, I'm aware that's me and having talked for quite a while now, so I'm going to stop sharing my slides for a while. Bear with me. And we've got about 30 or 25 minutes left, but what I suggest we do is I want you to spend maybe about 8 minutes filling in a canvas by yourselves. Fill in the canvas for that up and coming session that you thought about. Think about those outcomes that you thought through when we talked through that miracle question from Jean Tabaka. Start filling out your canvas, either a physical copy, if you've got something like this, and I've got some physical copies if anybody wants a copy and is around in Wellington. Start to brainstorm that yourself individually, and then we're going to break out into breakout rooms, into pairs, and you're going to brainstorm that through with a partner, a quick exercise, and then we're going to get back together and have a bit of a Q&A and a bit of a discussion. Sound all right?
Just a reminder to take a copy of that, copy of the slides of the link that is in the chat.
Yep. Has everybody got a copy? Has everybody not got a copy? I mean, I can share a screen which has got a copy of that as an image if you just want to note down some things on a piece of paper. Just shout out in chat.
We did have one question, and whether the definitions on the power framework are going to be in your Google Slides. So if you share your links afterwards, that'd be awesome.
Totally. I'll share a copy of the slides with everybody, a link to the canvas as well. So yeah, and some links to some of the research and things that I've talked through. Yeah.
Wicked, nice. Grant Miller, sorry, do you need the screenshot? Is that what you're after? Yeah, if we could drop the screenshot in, that would be great.
Totally. I will share it. Actually, I'll take a photo and then I will pop it in. Actually, I can probably do that now.
Awesome.
So I will put it in the message. Some of you won't be able to pick up the message in Zoom if you've got an older version of Zoom, but I'll do both. So I will pop. Oh.
Cool.
So there's an image I've just dropped into chat, so you can use that. And what I'll do is I'll just start a timer. So just start brainstorming that. I'm around in the meantime, and then I will share my screen. So some of you got a copy of that as well. So bear with me.
Awesome.
Actually, Charlotte, can you set a timer?
Yep, can do.
Let's do this. Thanks. Just for 8 minutes.
Yep.
Just sharing the screen now.
Cool.
There you go. Oh, goes as soon as I do something.
Got a blank screen there.
I know. I was going to be smart and create the breakout rooms, but I can't do that. I will grab it back. There you go.
Thanks.
Oh. I think I've learned I just must not touch anything while I share. There, hands away from the keyboard.
Got 6 minutes left, everyone. Got 2 minutes left, everybody. I'd start wrapping up that last thought. There's a couple of good questions there as well, and in the chat when we get back together.
So I will just set up the breakout room. So what we'll do now is we'll send you off to breakout rooms and then spend a few minutes just talking through your canvas with your partner. And as a partner, listen and maybe any suggestions you can give afterwards or any ideas, and then we'll swap it round, right? So we'll give you a bit of a message when it's time to swap round. So we'll only have a few minutes each, and then we'll get back together and close off and sort of talk through any questions. Hey everybody, welcome back.
Hello.
Wait, I gotta tell my partner something. I couldn't finish my sentence.
Oh.
Good tip. Thank you for the product idea. I gotta treat it as a product. It will simplify a lot of things. Sorry. Had to tell him this. Thanks.
Oh, good.
How was that, everybody? Useful to
It's good. Yes. Yeah.
Great.
Very
Nice
nice.
talking with you, Sri.
Very nice to pair up and get some extra ideas.
Great stuff. And that's the thing, right? It's yeah, take the opportunity to use it to pair, to bounce ideas, to help listen to others. Often what we call the rubber duck, right? Where you're throwing ideas out there and, you know, just by talking it through, you're kind of coming up with some new stuff. Great stuff.
Yeah.
You said there were some questions or some things there, Charlotte?
Yeah, so we had one from Dan around, it seems to him that the Canvas purpose, outputs and outcomes refer to the same thing. And he thinks of outputs as a product that people can get from the workshop. And then they use that to achieve their goal in the real world, like so that in a user story. So you can't assess whether the outcomes are achieved until some time after the workshop. Still well worth thinking about, and possibly the thing to think most about. So there was that sort of comment as well. And then we had one from Gretel around, do you think agendas should state the outcomes of each topic? And then Maru had a couple here. So how do I define an environment if we're all using online, so Zoom and Mural as the examples that he's got there? And he can't bring games and tools into the setup like a room as he would usually. So, you know, any thoughts or tips or feedback around those things, Ant?
Wow, okay. So I guess the outcome output one, I think there's a difference between a product and a workshop. I think definitely a product for customers and delivering outcomes, you need to put something out there in the field. I think we're talking here about outcomes for a workshop, which is typically something that's not tangible. It's more like a feeling, or it's more like agreement or a thing, right? That you can control, or not control, but contain within that workshop itself, as opposed to a physical thing. I think the remote stuff, games and things, wow. I would just, that's a hard one, right? There's a whole host of things. I use a lot of Mural, which is really good. There's another tool called, is it Jam?
Google Jamboards?
Yeah, Jamboards, stuff like that you can use, and think about what physical games or exercises you might do, and then just muralize it or jammerize it, you know, whatever you want to say. But for instance, when I've been writing courses, a lot of that stuff, all we've done is taken physical games, physical exercises, and then just try and muralize it. So I would start there, right? Just think about how you could work it on an online environment. And to me, an online environment is no different. I think what changes is the way you use breakout rooms, you know, smaller groups, things like that, exercises. That's a bigger topic in itself, I would think, but you know, throw it out there. Anybody's got any ideas or what they think?
I'm going to drop a link into, it was actually our first Agile Welly event when we went into lockdown, around how to handle remote retrospectives. And we wrote a blog to support the conversation that we had. So I'll just drop the link in there because although these are tools, it's not necessarily games. It might just give people other things to think about.
Thank you,
Again,
Charlotte.
I'm not sure if Hannah, the workshopper, has disappeared or not. I can't quite see it across the tiles, but Hannah leads Play 14 down here in Sydney, and I've been going to a few of her sessions. She's got tons of online games that you can do when we're all working remotely. So she's well worth reaching out to, or maybe it's another topic you can do separately.
That's a great suggestion. Thank you. I'll pop that on our list of things to consider.
Yeah, I always thought that it was very difficult to do it remotely, but when you really think about it and do some research, you can do almost any game and any tool remotely. If there's one thing good about coronavirus, is that I researched that properly.
Yeah, I think for me, you know, Zoom, I think you need to think about other tools as well, like Mural, like Jamboard. There's even simple things you can do, like, and I'm not an improv person, right? Far from it, but there's even simple things you can do using Zoom, like exercises in terms of, you know, connecting people within Zoom and things like that. Yeah, but I think it's probably a wider topic, but there's a whole host of stuff you can do in Mural, and a lot of fun you can have in that in terms of creating templates, moving stuff around, collaborating, sharing, using a lot of imagery, stuff like that.
And using Google Docs is good as well.
Yeah.
Cool. Any other questions for Ant before we wrap up?
Yeah, I'd like to make one comment on the question about outcomes and outputs and purpose and stuff. You know, the idea for Canvas is really good, but if you want to change the Canvas and do it yourself, that's a real agile experiment that I would try out if I were you.
Cool.
Cool. Well, look, we'll I sent a copy of the slides round. There's some links and things that we've talked through here that we'll send around and put on the meetup. Yeah, feel free to use a Canvas, use it, abuse it. Yeah. Prepare for your sessions. We'll send a link round for a copy if you want to download that as well. Yeah, go for it. You've got the Google sort of slide link as well, so you can duplicate that and go for your lives.